Bore da. I want to speak to you this morning about a subject that can be rather frightening for us as Pentecostals, and that is silence. Silence can be embarrassing, silence can be frightening, silence for some can be absolutely terrifying. While for others, of course, silence can be relaxing and tranquil. Some people love to sit for hours in silence reading a book, and the only noise heard is the clock ticking in the background. John Newton, the author of the great hymn Amazing Grace, said that the most precious time of the day for him was when he returned to the vicarage after morning prayers, and he would enter what he calls the silence of the study. And with his pipe in his mouth, he would enjoy sweet communion with God in prayer and meditation. Others, of course, find silence absolutely intolerable, and even homework necessitates some noise of music playing in the background. Now, this morning, I would like us to consider three silences in the Bible. They are those occasions when God says nothing, and yet the effect of the silence upon our lives, on the one hand, can be frightening, and on the other hand, can be absolutely thrilling. The first silence I have entitled the silence of judgment. Silence, you see, played a significant part in the life of Jesus. When Jesus stood before Pilate in the marble judgment hall, Jesus, the prisoner, stands before Pilate, the judge. He has been whipped. Upon his head is the crown of thorns, and Pilate is cross-examining him. And Pilate seems to appeal to Jesus' common sense by saying, "Do you refuse to speak to me? Don't you realize that I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" And having no words pass through his lips, Jesus could have denounced Pilate as he did the Pharisees. Jesus could have pleaded his case before Pilate, before Herod, before Annas, before Caiaphas and the Sanhedrin. But you see, the hours for words was past. This was the hour of judgment, a judgment of burning silence. And then secondly, I want you to think of another silence in Scripture, the silence of forgiveness. The silence of God can also be an expression of sweet, forgiving love. Think of that occasion in the parable of the prodigal son when the son returns. The father is silent. No words of condemnation, but rather the father runs towards him, embraces him, and kisses him. He says nothing except to the servants. Then think of that occasion when the woman caught in the very act of adultery is brought before Jesus. The accusers tell Jesus that the law, according to Moses, demands that she be stoned to death. But Jesus, however, is silent. He says nothing. Rather, he writes something on the sand. And when he speaks, he says, "If any one of you is without sin, let him cast the first stone." The silence of forgiveness. And thank God that we too have experienced something of God's silence of forgiveness. And then the final one is the silence of fellowship. There is a prophetic utterance in Psalm 46 and verse 10 when the psalmist says, "Be still and know that I am God." Or in the New Living Translation, it says, "Be silent and know that I am God." In the midst of the hustle and bustle of everyday life, God invites us to the silence of fellowship. Think of the two on the road to Emmaus. They had that wonderful biblical exposition by Jesus, the great teacher. And even in the noise of conversation, they did not recognize him. But in the silence of the inn, as they broke bread together, it was then they knew the Master. The silence of fellowship. And God this morning invites you and me this day to experience something of that silence of fellowship with him. If we have fallen, the silence of forgiveness. And if we feel we're under the silence of judgment, then we can come and experience the silence of forgiveness. And so for today, I pray with the hymn writer, "Speak, Lord, in thy stillness, while I wait on thee. Hush my heart to listen in expectancy." Amen.